I never thought 3 minutes could cause so much trouble. But apparently at my office, punctuality wasn't just a guideline. It was law. That Monday morning, I had hit every green light on the way to work, only to be delayed by an unusually slow train at the crossing. I arrived at my desk exactly 3 minutes late. Just 3. I barely had time to breathe when I noticed a note on my keyboard. My manager, Mr. Thornton, had documented my tardiness in the system, an official write-up. A single sheet of paper, sterile, mechanical, and filled with jargon about performance expectations and accountability. I stared at it, disbelief turning slowly into irritation. 3 minutes. That was all it took. It wasn't about the time, really. It was about control. Mr. Thornton had a reputation for micromanaging and exaggerating minor infractions. Everyone tiptoed around him, worried that any tiny mistake could be cataloged in his disciplinary book. I, however, had a stubborn streak, 3 minutes late, and he thought he could wield this as leverage against me? I decided then and there that I wouldn't let it slide quietly, but I had to be clever. I couldn't just confront him or retaliate openly. That would look petty. Instead, I began observing him. Patterns, habits, small inconsistencies. The way he always took the same route to the coffee machine. The way he paused to check emails at exactly 10:07 a.m. The way he bragged about efficiency in front of others. Everything was a potential lever. The following day, I arrived precisely on time. Every morning after, I made sure to be punctual, or rather, I exaggerated my punctuality to absurd levels. I arrived 5 minutes early, not rushing, but making it visible. I noticed subtle reactions. Mr. Thornton's eyes narrowed each time. He scribbled notes, probably in his imaginary punctuality ledger. I smiled silently. He had no idea I was planning more than just small acts of compliance. Then came the opportunity. Thursday morning, Mr. Thornton held a meeting about productivity, emphasizing time management, and the importance of never being late. He glanced at me repeatedly, probably to make an example. I nodded along, taking notes meticulously, pretending to be the model employee. But I was planting seeds, small, careful, psychological seeds that would later grow into the perfect payback. I noticed how he often left sensitive documents on his desk when he stepped out for meetings. The folders, the spreadsheets, the memos. They were all accessible for just a moment. And then it hit me. If I wanted to get clever, I had to work subtly, invisibly, without leaving any trace of direct confrontation. By the end of the week, my plan had taken shape. I didn't want revenge that burned bridges. I wanted clever, undeniable, and inescapable. Something that would highlight the absurdity of his write-up without making it seem personal. Something that would teach him a lesson in subtlety, timing, and respect for the people he managed. It all started with observation, documentation, and patience. 3 minutes late it seemed minor, but I was about to prove that clever payback can turn even the smallest injustice into a lesson that can't be ignored. The following Monday, I executed the first phase of my plan. I arrived at work 15 minutes early. Not hurried, just casually early, enough to be noticed but not obnoxious. I organized my desk, prepared my emails, and, most importantly, made sure Mr. Thornton saw me in the break room sipping coffee calmly, while reviewing my notes. The look on his face, a mix of annoyance and suspicion, was priceless. He scribbled in his notebook as if noting every detail, unaware that I was controlling the narrative. That afternoon, I noticed him hovering near the copier, clearly frustrated with a minor jam. I approached casually, offering to help. He hesitated, probably suspicious, but allowed it. The copier was fixed quickly, effortlessly, but I didn't make a scene. I smiled politely and walked away, letting the impression linger. Competent, calm, and unshakable. I could see his irritation mounting. He wanted to assert dominance, but every move I made subtly reinforced my capability, without appearing confrontational. Then came the opportunity of opportunity, the weekly team meeting. Mr. Thornton, as usual, lectured about productivity, efficiency, and the importance of never letting tiny infractions disrupt workflow. He paused, eyes darting toward me, expecting perhaps a nod of guilt or meek apology. I nodded, but not in submission. My nod conveyed confidence, calmness, and readiness. It was a tiny act, but in the theater of office politics, it was a power move. I had already started planting small doubts among our colleagues. Nothing direct, nothing confrontational, just casual observations. I would comment on workflow inefficiencies, highlight missed details politely, and praise team contributions where appropriate. Slowly, the office began noticing patterns Mr. Thornton himself ignored. They didn't know I was guiding their perception, but by the end of the week, murmurs started. Why does he never notice his own inefficiency? The true genius of my plan lay in subtle leverage. Mr. Thornton was meticulous about tracking time, yet he often overlooked the little things, misfiled documents, misplaced memos, minor lapses that never impacted outcomes. I began keeping a record of these, in parallel with his notes about me. Every time he lectured about punctuality, I had documented evidence that his behavior wasn't flawless either, not to confront him publicly, but to be ready for the perfect, inevitable moment. And that moment arrived on Thursday. He had left sensitive client spreadsheets on his desk while rushing to a meeting, oblivious that the team could see them. I noticed immediately and sent a polite email to him and the client, highlighting minor errors in the spreadsheet that could have caused serious confusion, but framed entirely as a professional check. He panicked when he realized the error, unaware that my check preserved his credibility, but subtly highlighted his oversight. The office noticed too, realizing that the so-called timing expert had slipped. By the end of the week, the tension had shifted. I was no longer just an employee who had been 3 minutes late. I had become the competent, calm professional who saw details others missed. Mr. Thornton's authority, previously unquestioned, was subtly undermined. He lectured more cautiously, double-checked his own work, and looked noticeably stressed. Meanwhile, I maintained the facade of punctuality and obedience, letting the office gossip and perception do the work for me. Every move I made was deliberate. I never reacted impulsively, never raised my voice, and never directly confronted him about the write-up. Instead, I used timing, subtle observation, and quiet competence as my arsenal. The office began talking, not about my lateness, but about my skill, professionalism, and attention to detail. It was a slow burn. Each small act, each tiny correction, each subtle acknowledgement built a narrative that left Mr. Thornton exposed without ever seeming personal. He was so focused on policing minor infractions that he didn't realize I was rewriting the story of competence in the office. My story, not his. By Friday, I had achieved the impossible. The team respected me more than ever. Clients trusted my judgment, and Mr. Thornton was visibly unsettled. The write-up that had seemed like a slap on the wrist became a catalyst for demonstrating strategy, patience, and subtle revenge. And I knew the final act was coming. The moment when the clever payback would be undeniable, visible to everyone in the office, and entirely earned without breaking a single professional rule. The following Monday, the moment of truth arrived. Mr. Thornton called a special team meeting, ostensibly to discuss productivity improvements and to reiterate his expectations for punctuality. I walked in early calm, carrying my neatly organized folder. Everyone else was quietly shuffling in, already tense from the undercurrent of anxiety that Mr. Thornton cultivated so expertly. As expected, he opened with a pointed comment about punctuality. His eyes scanned the room and paused on me for the longest moment. I nodded politely, a subtle smile on my face, projecting calm confidence. I didn't apologize, didn't justify, didn't react in any way that could be construed as defensive. This, I knew, would be the subtle psychological anchor that made the rest of the room unconsciously reassess the previous write-up. The meeting progressed with the usual slides and statistics. Mr. Thornton began to go over recent project timelines, emphasizing efficiency metrics. This was my chance. I had prepared a concise, professional summary of every project I had handled over the past month, highlighting how minor delays and issues were often due to factors outside my control, and in one case, even caused by Mr. Thornton's own oversight. I presented it calmly, with clear charts, dates, and references, making it impossible to refute. A noticeable shift occurred in the room. Colleagues began nodding, some exchanging quick glances, realizing that my contributions had consistently been on point. Mr. Thornton shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He attempted to interject, trying to reassert control, but every point he made was countered subtly by the evidence I presented, not confrontationally, not aggressively, but factually. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. One of the team members raised a question about a minor scheduling mishap that Mr. Thornton had previously blamed on me. I calmly referenced the documented timeline, showing clearly that the error was a result of a miscommunication on his end. The entire room went silent. Mr. Thornton's face turned pale. He stammered, attempting to justify himself, but the facts were unassailable. The tension in the office was palpable. I could feel the collective realization settling in. The write-up that seemed so unjust now looked petty and disproportionate. Colleagues who had been silently critical of me now saw the larger picture. Mr. Thornton, the enforcer of rules, was exposed as fallible human and, most importantly, no longer the unassailable authority he had presented himself to be. After the meeting, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The shift had already happened. Conversations in the break room, once filled with subtle whispers about my punctuality, now included acknowledgement of my professionalism and competence. People approached me for advice, clarification, and collaboration, subtly reinforcing my restored reputation. But I wasn't done. The clever payback wasn't about embarrassment. It was about demonstrating that control comes from competence, preparation, and patience, not fear. I began quietly mentoring newer employees, sharing insights, and helping streamline workflows. Each act of support further highlighted the contrast between my calm, effective approach and Mr. Thornton's micromanagement and tendency to overreact. By the end of the week, the office dynamics had shifted completely. Mr. Thornton was noticeably more cautious, less aggressive in enforcing minor rules, and more thoughtful in his interactions. I had achieved what I set out to do. I had turned a minor write-up into a demonstration of strategy, calm professionalism, and subtle influence. I learned a powerful lesson. Revenge doesn't have to be loud or vindictive. The most effective payback is clever, invisible, and undeniable, demonstrated through consistent, professional action rather than confrontation. And while Mr. Thornton still held his position, the balance of respect, authority, and influence in the office had subtly shifted. It was quiet, precise, and permanent, an elegant victory born from patience, observation, and careful planning. The final phase of my plan unfolded over the next week. Mr. Thornton, still reeling from the subtle but undeniable shift in office perception, tried to reassert control. He issued memos, reminded the team about punctuality policies, and even sent a few pointed emails referencing minor infractions. I received one personally that morning, a thinly veiled reminder of the previous write-up, complete with a passive-aggressive line. Please ensure timeliness in the future. I smiled, knowing this would be the perfect moment to execute the final act of clever payback. I arrived at work precisely on time, walked past my desk with casual confidence, and paused in the break room where several colleagues were already chatting. With a subtle, polite nod, I handed out a small, printed guide I had created, tips for efficient time management and workflow optimization. It was professional, well-formatted, and full of actionable advice, helpful without being condescending. I made sure to include examples of real scenarios, carefully avoiding direct references to the write-up or Mr. Thornton's mistakes. The office reaction was immediate. Colleagues thanked me quietly, flipped through the pages, and asked questions about workflow improvements. Mr. Thornton noticed, of course, and the look on his face was priceless. Pride, confusion, and a tinge of irritation all at once. He realized that while he had tried to control the narrative through punishment, I had turned the situation into a demonstration of competence and leadership. The true brilliance was in subtlety. I didn't call him out. I didn't gloat. I simply provided value, showcased professionalism, and let the office observe the contrast. By the end of the day, whispers weren't about the write-up or my tardiness. They were about my initiative, knowledge, and ability to handle pressure gracefully. The clever payback was complete. The same event he had used to assert authority had highlighted my strengths and subtly undermined his. Later that week, a team project required urgent attention, and Mr. Thornton attempted to micromanage as usual. I calmly stepped in, suggesting an efficient workflow, delegating tasks clearly, and ensuring deadlines were met flawlessly. Colleagues began to follow my lead naturally, turning to me for guidance. The irony was delicious. The boss who had penalized me for 3 minutes of tardiness now relied on me for major decisions and operational stability. By the time Friday arrived, the office atmosphere had transformed. Mr. Thornton was noticeably more cautious, double-checking his own work, and less likely to micromanage minor infractions. I had turned a trivial write-up into a lesson in strategy, patience, and professional influence. My reputation, once threatened by a bureaucratic quibble, was stronger than ever. Colleagues approached me with questions, collaboration requests, and subtle compliments, proof that influence isn't enforced, it's earned. Reflecting on the week, I realized something vital. Clever payback doesn't need to be overt, dramatic, or vindictive. It works best when subtle, professional, and undeniable. By documenting carefully, observing patterns, and responding with calm, strategic competence, I had not only defended my reputation but enhanced it. The 3 minutes of tardiness had turned into an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, intelligence, and quiet leadership. As I closed my laptop Friday evening, I smiled. Mr. Thornton's write-up had seemed like an inconvenience, maybe even a punishment, but in reality, it was a catalyst, a chance to show the office and myself that clever thinking, patience, and professionalism could transform a small setback into a remarkable victory. So here's the takeaway. Never underestimate subtle, strategic action. Watch, observe, document, and act with precision. The smallest injustice can become the stage for the most satisfying triumph, if approached correctly. And remember, revenge isn't about humiliation. It's about creating undeniable results while maintaining dignity and professionalism. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life office drama, clever paybacks, and professional wins. Hit the bell icon, catch every story that proves patience, strategy, and intelligence always win in the end. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next one.